Thank you very much. You can hear me, guys, yeah? Okay, thanks. So basically, thank you, Brian. And thank you, Ciaran. I know you're busy. And I suppose, as I said, the context today, as I said, is looking at food tourism, food destinations as a driver of tourism, and Cork's tourism action plan to become a world gastronomic capital in 2030. Now, I give apologies on behalf of Aisling McDermott, who's in Belfast today, the head of Global Partnerships at Tourism Ireland, but she very kindly gave me some feedback on Irish cuisine following trade and media fam trips, which are always very positive. In the main, sentiment on Asian perceptions of food in Ireland are, and Aisling very kindly picked 3 examples. One was Japanese visitors are always keen to try local cuisine and are very complimentary of the quality of food on offer. And of course, Japanese love seafood, as you know, which you know, Ireland being an island nation does very well, and Kinsale does particularly well. Then Indian visitors are pleasantly surprised at the variety of vegetarian and vegan food options available. And is Cafe Paradiso still around these days? Yeah, just opposite Riverlea Hotel if you're staying in the future. And then Chinese visitors like to try Irish food, but always request at least one meal a day is of an Asian variety. And as we said in Kinsale that time when we had the discussion, you know, last year, it's only my personal view, but I think it's very easy for any Irish food retailer, any restaurant, any hotel to do simple things like mabu tofu, which is basically tofu and minced beef in particular sauce. You know, it's not particularly expensive. There's plenty of Asian markets to get the sauce, and it makes Asians very happy that they don't automatically have to, much as we enjoy burgers and fish and chips, and I know that they're good margin items. You know, but if that's what Chinese in particular want, then why not provide it? Okay, let's get straight into it. Brian, you're one of the architects of this plan, so can you update us really on Cork's Developing Gastronomic Tourism Action Plan 2025 to 2028 and the bid to become a world gastronomic capital in 2030? Over to you, Brian.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, look, I suppose today the focus has been on food sector, agri-sector today, so I suppose from a tourism point of view, just to put it in some sort of scale to the conversation to date, somebody mentioned this morning that we'll have 10 billion mouths to feed globally. By 2040, 2.5 billion of those will be outbound travellers. They'll be travelling internationally. So annually, there's a huge market there from a tourism perspective that we have to compete in from an Irish perspective. The tourism sector is a lower yielding sector for the exchequer than other sectors are, so sometimes doesn't get the same focus in the general population from what it delivers. Contributes about 10 billion euro to the Irish economy in a given year with 3 billion euro in direct exchequer receipts. So it's not nothing. It's the largest indigenous employer with 1 in 12 people in the country working in tourism and hospitality. What it probably doesn't do a good enough job about explaining, though, is we create an awful lot of indirect benefits to the economy. So we create vibrancy, footfall, throughput on our streets and so on and so forth that make other businesses viable that maybe wouldn't be viable if it wasn't for visitors that were also coming to our towns and cities. The main 3 reasons that international visitors come to Ireland are for, 1, our landscape, secondly, our people, and 3, our heritage and culture. And there aren't too many sectors, ways of life, whatever you want to call it, in Ireland where the 3 of those interact as food or agriculture. So people, landscape, and heritage core to everything that's been talked about today. Any successful destination then, though, in the world has to have a USP or point of difference, especially if you're looking for kind of cultural holidays. So Ireland is an expensive destination. It's not a cheap destination. So people don't come here for fly and flop cheap holidays. They come here for a cultural type holiday, and their expectations are higher and different as a result. But if you're going to compete in that international landscape, you have to have a USP or point of differentiation. So we work with the tourism industry and sector and public and private stakeholders in destinations all around the country to say, well, if you want to become a tourism destination, if you want to maintain, you know, the likes of Kinsale is obviously a world-renowned destination, but you can't take it for granted that that'll continue to exist. because it relies on some key players delivering a certain service. We look for what is the USP or point of difference within each destination, so the strength of that destination where we can get everybody to collaborate to ensure that the proposition holds up from a visitor point of view. So it's all well and good for Seamus Heaney here from Visit Cork or Ashley McDermott in Tourism Ireland or ourselves to be promoting destinations online and promising something to the visitor, but if that experience doesn't hold up in the destination, it leaves a negative impact. The other probably link, which is important for some of the businesses talking to this morning, I, in a former life, worked with Cahill, your previous speaker, in Kerrygold actually. Worked in international markets on consumer foods, and the cost of converting visitors to become consumers, or sorry, not visitors, converting international consumers is very high for Irish indigenous companies. There's 8 million visitors coming to this island internationally every year. They're all potential customers. So the cost of us, and someone mentioned it earlier on, the quality is what sets Irish food apart. The cost of us getting samples of Kerrygold or subsequently Jameson and the amazing growth that they've had in international markets, the cost of getting those samples into people's hands to convert them to consumers was exorbitantly high when you've got to put people in market and so on and so forth. If they're coming to your market here, there's an opportunity at your doorstep from a food provider and a food maker point of view that's probably not been grappled with. So sorry, to answer your question, Cork, when we looked at it, what is the strength of Cork? It's been talked about all morning. So the history of Cork as a trading port isn't a military one, it's a mercantile one, and it's based on dairy exports predominantly at the start, but food, beef, etc., and that's continued to this date. I don't need to repeat everything that everybody said already about the food provision that exists, but making that visitor-facing and visitor-friendly and along the consumer purchasing journey of, you know, you can market it out there and say, we have this great food, that has to hold true at every step of the journey. And Desmond mentioned it, making it easy for farmers and technology. Technology is a huge part of it. The Gen Z are becoming the super foodie generation. So millennials were tarred with the brush of avocado and toast brigade instead of saving up for a mortgage, which is, you know, unfair, but that's what the international rhetoric became. The next generation coming behind are super foodies. They're very particular about what they want to eat. So if we're going to use that strength that exists in Cork to, and it's real, we're not trying to make it up, we need to make that visitor facing in a way that's consumable across the journey. So that's the ambition. There's a lot of the elements are there. There's some superb restaurants. Ciaran can talk more to in a while. We've got some at the Michelin star level. We've got some at the very affordable level, but the food quality in restaurants is very, very good. There are some meet the maker type experiences, not enough. So if you look at, and I know there was a debate earlier on, it's safe to say more than 60% of the artisanal producers in Ireland are based in Cork. There should be a lot more of them that are visitor facing, because that's potential customers for them. So it's become de facto now that the distillery has a visitor centre. That was unheard of 20 years ago when we set up when the Guinness Storehouse and the Jameson experience was set up. That was seen as being a little bit crazy. It's a manufacturing plant. Now it's de facto every distillery, they nearly put the visitor centre first. That same opportunity is there for the smallest of artisanal producers to the bigger players. So there's a real opportunity to tell that story and bring it to life. And I talked about international visitors, 8 million. There's 14 million domestic trips in a year. So you could be a food producer that has no interest in exporting, but there's 14 million people traveling around the country every year looking for things to do and part with their hard-earned money as well. And the last thing I'll say as just an intro, 1 in every 3 euros that a visitor spends is spent on food. Some of that is sustenance and some of that doesn't have to be an amazing experience. But if it's a bad experience, what's the one thing we all do when we come home from a holiday? We tell our friends about it. We don't tell our friends about everything. When we went to the cinema, we don't tell our friends about anything else we do. The one thing we tell everybody about is where we went on holidays, what was good about it. So you've got natural advocates there to work with, and I think Cork is uniquely positioned to take advantage of that.
Thank you very much. That was a good broad brush overview, and I appreciate it. And later, like, we'll talk to you first, Ciaran, and then we'll, perhaps look at, it's fine to have a plan. It's fine to want to have a bid, but what's actually missing? Where are the gaps? What do we need to do to actually deliver this? So we'll start with you, Ciaran, and Can you tell us where this whole idea of the food tourism initiative comes from? And you mentioned when we were preparing some of the origins with the Culinary Coast initiative in West Cork.
Yeah, I suppose it's going back a number of years. To come back to one of Brian's points, where we were, I suppose it used to bother us when we're in the food business that Ireland, we knew how good the product was, the quality of the produce, and we knew that there was, I suppose, a groundswell of talent and chefs that were using that produce and doing some really, really amazing things. So it's the fact that it's becoming recognised internationally. You know, my hope in a couple of years' time is that we'll be sitting here, and within those top 3 things that people want to visit Ireland for will be the food, because I think there's a huge opportunity in it. You know, obviously I'm Wild Atlantic Way based, and that's become known all over the world. And we sat down, a couple of us, a couple of years ago, and said, you know, we want to own that food piece of the Wild Atlantic Way, because, you know, when you have over 60% of the artisan producers in the country based in Cork, that's a big statement. That means, you know, as my chefs call it, their larder on their doorstep. No other chef in the world has access to what we have access to in Cork. My head chef is from Chennai in India, and he's actually really kind of opened my eyes to how lucky we are and what we have. Since he's come in, like he trained with Dorchester Group in London, and he said to me in his first couple of weeks, he said, Ciaran, we didn't have access to this produce in the best restaurants in London. He said it was coming through a wholesaler, it's coming through a third party. He said, everything I can buy, I meet the farmer, I meet the producer, I can meet the fisherman. Wow. Everything, you know, our salads come from 500 yards down the road, the farmer brings them in himself. You know, it's that direct connection with the producer is really, really unique, and it's something that I think we in the industry understand and probably take for granted a little bit. But then, I suppose, to answer your question of what's missing is, I suppose, how we communicate that to the rest of the world. And I think that's where setting a vision and a goal like World Centre of Gastronomy, it's an ambitious vision for a county like Cork. But we went and visited Catalonia as part of one of the field trips on this to see what that entails. We went to Catalonia in April, a group last year, and it was a mixture of people from the industry and from Fáilte Ireland, and from Seamus's operation in Pure Cork. And what we learned from that is we have absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And that's not being disrespectful to Catalonia. It was amazing. What they've done is incredible. The cohesive plan that they put together, multi-agency plan with the people on the ground, to the producers, the chefs, the big hotel groups were bought into this ethos of sourcing local, looking at what's on their doorstep and shouting about it. But what we learned from that was what we're probably not good at is talking that up and telling people that story. And I think they did that very well. They pieced together that whole journey and that whole food culture really, really well, their World Centre of Gastronomy for next year. And we actually came back from that very encouraged by it, saying, you know, we have all of these raw materials, we have everything Catalonia has, and another group went to San Sebastian. They came back saying the same thing, but they're building a whole food tourism culture and product based on this, and I think that's the opportunity for Cork. We were probably a little bit insular about it in West Cork initially. Seamus will attest to that. I think when we felt, no, this is a West Cork story, and I suppose we've opened our minds to say, no, this is actually a Cork story. You know, there's producers all over Cork, East Cork, North Cork. We in our own restaurants get produce from all over the county, and it is the best in the world. And I don't say that in a bragging way. It's incredible, the producers we have on our doorstep and the passion and story that they can tell. And for a long time, we relied on, I suppose the consumer relied on the chef, the restaurant, the cafe, to give you that connection with the produce. And to go back to Brian's point, we're doing it well on the drink side of it, on the beverage production side of it. As you say, there's visitor centres popping up all over. Like we have one in Kinsale now in Blacks. Another experience for people to enjoy. They can come in and have their gin and tonic or their whiskey in our bar on a Friday night. They can go visit where that was produced on a Saturday morning. That's incredible. But I think that can be extrapolated into the food product. And I think that's what we're starting this journey on, because a lot of this came from conversations between a couple of us on the ground saying, there's a story in this, there's more in this product. There's, you know, in West Cork in particular, it's 1 to 2 night dwell time. People feel they'll come to Cork, they'll do English Market, they'll see the city, they'll go West Cork, and then they're going on generally to Dingle, Killarney, Kenmare direction. Our whole, I suppose, goal with this is to increase dwell time in a particular place. And when we started this journey, a couple of us sitting down just discussing how we could bring this on, and I mean, I just have to say that Fáilte Ireland, Pure Cork, and the people then who've taken this and run with it, we're busy in our businesses every day. It's been incredible to see. I was reading some kind of briefing documents that Fáilte Ireland did yesterday on where we've got to and where we've got on this food journey towards the vision of World Centre for Gastronomy. It's actually incredible in a couple of years to see how confident we now are to talk about it, to tell the story. And where this, I suppose, registered for me, where the opportunity was, my former life, I worked in an accountancy firm, KPMG. My previous managing partner, I walked into our hotel in Skull one day and he was sitting in the bar. And I said, God, I said, what do you, I said, I didn't expect to see you here. And he said, I'm down. He said, I dined in Chestnut last night in Ballydehob, which is a 1-star Michelin. He said, I'm dining in DD in Baltimore tonight, which is a 2-star Michelin. Now, both those villages have under 400 people. If you said 10 years ago that in West Cork we would have a 1-star and a 2-star Michelin in 2 villages with under 400 people, someone would have laughed you out the door. Now we're creating food destinations off the back of that. There's people come and stay with us in our hotel in Skull because they're dining in Chestnut and then they're going to DD or vice versa. But he said to me, he said, this will be an annual trip for us. He said, so far it's been absolutely amazing. But I said, the next time, I said, stay for an extra couple of days and we'll arrange a farm trip. We'll arrange for you to go to see Gubeen. We'll arrange for you to go to a distillery. And he actually said to me, he said, I didn't know anything about that. And his partner was with him and he said,
so it goes back to what you said about communication.
Completely. And he didn't know he could go and visit the farm that he's getting, the produce is coming from the night before. Right. And where that connection is now coming. So we now have the opportunity to connect the consumer directly with the producer, which is something we never did before. It was always through us, through the chef. And that connection, I think, is the most powerful connection where you see,
the authenticity.
Absolutely. And you see, when we come to sustainability, that's sustainability at its best. We can talk about all these different accreditations, which are really important and which all of us are part of. But the real walk and the talk is buying the salads from the producer down the road. Absolutely. That are organically produced, that are not flying halfway around the world to get to you, but are of amazing quality. You're supporting local employment. And it's the ultimate sustainability.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm very conscious. Can you imagine we could have spent 2 hours on this? We've 5 minutes left already. Thanks so much. I suppose just to pull it all together and what you were saying earlier about tourism, it reminded me when we started Age Matters, we had a briefing from the Management Tourism Ireland, and then we had a briefing from people in Borbia. And what we learned very quickly, tourism is the bridgehead for agri-food in Asia and vice versa. And also what you were saying about nothing to fear itself. It was a bit shocking to me earlier when, as expected, so many people in this room have been to Asia, but then so few do business with Asia. And there's that gap, that disconnect. And no matter what business you're in, if you want to do business with Japanese companies, they're already in Ireland. You don't have to fly to Japan. You can talk to the companies here. You can go over to London. There's so many of them, It's just making that effort. There's a false perception. One of the terms I hate more than anything else is the Far East. It's not far at all. It's actually here in Ireland, and it's also in London and Paris, and if you're in financial services, Frankfurt or, distribution, Dusseldorf, they're already here. It's all close to us. It's near geography. It's not far away. And then there are ideas, and we can learn so much from each other. Like Japan, what they did was, in Japan there was a system whereby, as the population got very elderly, local governments wanted to provide what you were saying. They want to provide tours for the elderly who've a lot of money and want to travel, but primarily want to stay in Japan. So in Kyushu in the south and other places, they created this train called Orange Tetsuro. It's literally an orange train. They built a train with huge wide open windows. Now, you know the quality of Japanese trains, right? But these are food trains where people not only eat amazing food, and like the very best food, looking out at beautiful nature, but they have stops along the way. And Japan is into these onsen, these spas. So people will stop at a spa, have an amazing food, relax for a few hours in the spa, and then get back on the train and go again, and then overnight and everything else. And they found this is a way of keeping them within the region instead of going to other places. So we can learn so much for each other. Going back to the point, how do we communicate it better, Brian?
I don't disagree. It is communication part of it, but I think it's actually a bit broader than that. And I think you look at any successful destination I mentioned at the start, the USP or point of differentiation, that's what they have and they nail it. The other thing that any other successful destination has is collaboration. And that's the same anywhere in the world. And it's quite difficult for businesses to give of their time because they're all so busy and there's margin pressures and cost pressures and there's short lead times and there's, you know, crazy things going on in the world and all sorts of stuff. But tourism is different because you visit a destination, whereas consumer goods, you buy a product. You're one product, it's either good or it's not. If you come to the destination and one element falls over, the whole destination potentially falls over. So you absolutely have to have the collaboration piece.
It's all interconnected. Okay, we're out of time. We've 3 minutes, and in reality, I'm chairing the next session. I'd never have my own panel late. Seamus, could we have one quick comment from you, very, very short? What's one thing Cork needs, short and sweet, please, to do better from Visit Cork, Seamus?
I just found the microphone in my pocket. Sorry. What's the one thing?
One thing, short and sweet, please.
It's a very
one serious thing Cork needs to do. But
I think it's a very difficult one because I suppose the panel that you have on the stage have articulated
fine,
it
Seamus,
home
one
very
thing,
well.
please.
Maybe just the origin of the food on menus. That if every restaurant and every hotel gave the origin of the food, where it's produced and how far it's travelled in Cork, I think would be a great story.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Ciaran?
Yeah, valid point, and that slipped in the last couple of years because it became just the norm, and it became expected that all your produce was produced locally. But the important point that's been made in the last while is the tourism person coming in isn't aware of that. They're not aware of the origins of the product. We assume they know that we're getting it from the road. So it's telling that story a little better. To come back to Brian's point on collaboration, I think the collaboration piece is what we're really good at. If you look at this whole vision for World Centre of Gastronomy, it's involved the university, Jared and his team.
Sure.
But the collaboration,
sorry, we're out of time, sorry.
But the collaboration piece for me is what's going to get World Centre of Gastronomy for 2030, because I think it's what we've done really well as a collective.
Brian, last word to you, literally 1 minute.
Yeah, we're all saying the same thing. It's collaboration, it's the cross-selling. It's getting the people that have all the connected bits of the journey. Ciaran does a great job of cross-selling. You nailed it. You said the visitor partner from KPMG came down and wasn't aware. You were able to make them aware. Everyone who's a touch point needs to be able to make their visitors aware of all the elements.
Great. Thank you very much. So collaboration is the name of the game. Let's thank the panel, guys. We stay there, we'll take one photo. Okay, we're going to take one photo, and while we're doing that, could we call up the next panel, which is the whiskey panel. That's Oina Cahan, June O'Connell, John O'Connell, Catherine O'Grady Powers, and Conor Hyde, if you head around the back. We'll just take one photo here, guys, please.